MTA Chair and CEO, here with all kinds of fabulous people. Jamie Torres Springer, President of MTA Construction Development. Chief Accessibility Officer, Quimel Arroyo, the very elegant gentleman in the turtleneck. Also, we've got some celebrities here. We've got Assemblymember Jessica Gonzalez Rojas, who was with me in Albany yesterday, hearing some very good stuff about transit. Leroy Branch, representing New York City DOT, thank you for being here. The Brooklyn Borough Commissioner team, thank you. Danny Harris, Transportation Alternatives. TA has been for, what, 30 years now? 50 years, but I know it for 30 years. The leading organization advocating for bike and pedestrian issues in the city of New York. Juliet Michelson from our team, who's been working on these issues, both as an advocate and now at the MTA. And where is John Orcutt? John Orcutt from Bike New York and many, many other roles that he's played advancing the cause of a more diverse and inclusive transportation system. John, thank you for being here. I also want to acknowledge the role on this issue of the PCAC, the Permanent Citizens Advisory Commission of the MTA. Lisa Daglian out of town, but she's been a huge force on this issue for quite some time, and we thank Lisa and her team for all they do. Today we're talking about the next step to expand our the reach of the transit system with our new strategic plan, which we call Extending Transit's Reach. It provides a framework to improve connectivity between our vital transit system and cyclists, pedestrians, and users of shared or personal e-bikes and scooters. The plan calls for installation of new bike racks, both open air and secure, at key locations system-wide, near bus stops, subway, and commuter railroad stations, super important, and also with new pathways at MTA crossings. We're also putting a variety of other strategies in play, like more bike racks on buses. So when you want to get from A to B and you have a bike and it's a distance, you could take the bus and then get off and use your bike to get to wherever your destination. We want better bike lanes on bridges, better connections between transit and bike share. We can't do this work alone, obviously, so we are teaming up in all of these initiatives with stakeholders like the New York City Department of Transportation, represented by Leroy at this event, but also with municipalities and counties within the MTA region. Like the governor's proposals for housing, you're going to have to work with local authorities to really make all of these ideas real. And of course, we're always in partnership with our advocates, with our community leaders, and with our legislators, both at the state level and the city level, county level, and so on. Look, there's tremendous growth in the use of micro-mobility devices, and that gives us a chance to extend the reach of the transit system, the alternative to driving, to many areas that may not have a rail station nearby. So that means we can make transit more attractive to the outer boroughs, the 5 boroughs, all of the 5 boroughs, and also to our suburban counties. In these areas, having good pedestrian, bike, or scooter access for the last mile, as we say, the last mile of a trip, may make the difference for folks debating whether to take transit or to drive an automobile. This is a huge linchpin of our collective commitment to try to make transit more attractive and to get people out of cars. Listen, 3 core values drive everything we do, but especially in this initiative: equity, accessibility, and safety. Better micro-mobility connections are helping to improve access to jobs, to schools, to healthcare, cultural destinations, and it's especially true of residents of low-income and historically disadvantaged communities. We got to make this work for people who are a little further away and need strategies to get to rail and to get to long distances. And that means prioritizing what the needs of vulnerable user groups as we enhance bicycle, pedestrian, micro-mobility within our regional framework. And the environmental benefits, listen, they go without saying. More and better options means fewer cars on the road, and of course that means less harmful emissions and better air quality. It also reduces congestion and the need for parking around stations, creating opportunities for the kind of transit-oriented development you were hearing about from the governor yesterday, and generally just to make the areas around transit stations, which are usually at the heart of villages and downtowns and retail corridors, more dynamic in many ways. So this is how, one way, we're going to build a cleaner, greener New York, and we can't wait to get started. I just got to thank everybody who worked on this report. Juliet is here representing Emily, a much larger group. Jessica Matthew, who was sort of leading the team in many ways, gave birth a couple months ago. She lives a few blocks from here, but she's in that phase when she couldn't join us, but she did a ton of work. There's a great team at the MTA that is passionate about bikes and micromobility, and we're thrilled that they were able to help us develop this very comprehensive plan. So with that, Jamie Torres-Springer.
Thank you. Thank you, Jano. We're very proud of this plan. It represents a lot of work and consultation by the MTA team with stakeholders and advocates about how to more fully integrate our system with increasing bike and scooter use that are a hallmark of the future across the city and region. I want to say this is a personal issue for me. I'm one of those strongly committed riders and users of micromobility. I city biked here this morning, and also, as I was mentioning earlier, have experienced the safety impacts of our lack of full access across the city as recently as yesterday, with a tragic fatality that occurred not too far from here with a close friend of our family. So we are saying with this plan as the MTA that we will do everything in our power to ensure equitable and safe access for bikes, scooters, and pedestrians across our system. And we will support our partners who, as Jano pointed out, are most often in the lead across the city on many of these issues in doing so. But we are stepping up and making that commitment because we understand how important that is to the future of the transit system. We will be making immediate improvements under this plan, some of which have already begun. There are projects already initiated to provide end-to-end connectivity between Randall's Island, Manhattan, and the Bronx for bikes and pedestrians. That will benefit thousands of people during special events and everyday park and ball field users on Randall's Island. The Manhattan connection will be completed this year to the new East Harlem Greenway that's being built by the city. A future project will complete the connection to Queens as work is done on that span of the RFK. We awarded a contract last month to complete an ADA-compliant bike and ped ramp on the south end of Cross Bay Bridge to the Rockaways, making the whole bridge accessible for bikes and pedestrians from Broad Channel to the Rockaway Peninsula, to be completed in 2024. But in October, we removed restrictions to allow biking across most of the bridge walkway now, the part that is sufficiently wide that we can allow for safe bicycle access today. Also in December, we awarded a contract that will create an ADA-compliant bike and pedestrian connection from Spuyten Duyvil to Inwood Hill Park in Upper Manhattan across the Henry Hudson Bridge. That will be completed in 2025. For the longer bridges that are in the MTA B&T bridges and tunnel system, we're adding bike racks along 3 select bus services that cross those bridges. The Q44 SBS across the Whitestone Bridge, the S79 SBS across the Verrazano, and the M60 SBS across the RFK Bridge. We also in this plan are committing to continuing to complete preparatory major capital work on these longer span bridges, even as we assess demand in the future for additional bike accessibility. We are announcing in this plan that we'll install 5 bike racks at Long Island Railroad and 13 bike racks at Metro North. We'll install bike racks at more than 1 bike rack per station, 5 Long Island Railroad and 13 Metro North Railroad stations, filling gaps in bike access across 7 suburban counties, and bringing the percentage of suburban commuter rail stations in New York with bike parking to 85%. This in addition to working with the city to install bike racks at stations that don't have bike racks nearby. While the plan found that 87% of our stations have a rack within 400 feet, we want to improve that based on equity and demand considerations. We've identified with the city 37 priority stations, including at the Classen Avenue station on the G line, not far from here, and some notable high-volume locations, including Broadway Junction, East 180th Street in the Bronx, Jackson Heights Roosevelt Avenue, and Metz Willets Point, where the city has committed to act to improve bike storage at all those stations. We'll be incorporating planning for bike parking and access into our 20-year needs assessment and future capital program. And beyond capital projects, there's room to innovate in the digital and customer communications space, which is an important part of micromobility access. We're starting work on incorporating multimodal trip planning into the My MTA app, including cycling. We're making it easier to understand how to take your bike on transit and looking to enable payment for micromobility services through Omni in the longer term, as well as it increasingly becomes a form of regional payment for transportation services. Transit accessibility and connectivity shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be considered and included from the beginning of our planning process. And the MTA is thrilled to be taking this next step forward. So we thank everybody who's been involved in this plan. And with that, I want to turn it over to Assemblymember Gonzalez Rojas for some remarks.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. This is such an exciting day, and this is actually a very full circle moment for me. My name is Assemblymember Jessica Gonzalez Rojas. I use she, her, pronouns. I represent District 34, which includes the areas of Astoria. So there's some benefits for Astoria here. Jackson Heights, and there's some benefits for Jackson Heights here. East Elmhurst, Corona, and Woodside. This is a full circle moment for me because I don't own a car. I advocate for a better system, the one that myself and my family and my community use. I represent a working class immigrant district. These working class immigrant workers often use bikes, other micromobility devices, buses and trains to get to their jobs, to their schools, to their places of worship, to the places where they receive health care, all around the day, 24 hours oftentimes. And this will revolutionize the ability to make sure that we have safer streets, cleaner commutes, and faster commutes as well. So this is very, very exciting. I'm so proud to work alongside advocates like myself who don't have cars, who have biked here, such as folks from Transportation Alternatives and from Bike New York. I want to also acknowledge my partner in the state Senate, who is no longer a senator, but has been fighting alongside me every single day as we fought for this legislation, Senator Biaggi. You know, as a member, yes, let's give Senator Biaggi a hand as well. I just finished my first term, and I do have to say this was such a priority bill for myself and my community. And to get this bill passed, not just with the leadership of many here, but for the partnership of many here. And then now to see this study being released and these developments in motion is incredibly exciting. And this is not just an issue for New York City. As you heard, this is going to ensure that our whole state is addressing our climate needs and our transportation needs with accessibility. So I am so thrilled for this announcement. I'm so thrilled to work alongside the MTA and Transportation Alternatives and Bike New York and so many others who have been part of this coalition. This is something that's going to really help the working class New Yorkers who use the system every day to depend on every facet of their life. So thank you so much and congratulations, and I look forward to continue to push to make sure we fully realize the potential of this study and of this accessibility project. So thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Quimel Arroyo, and I have the pleasure to serve as the Chief Accessibility Officer here at the MTA. I am so excited to be here this morning with such great partners in the advocacy community, elected officials, and of course, my own home at New York City DOT. All of us here at the MTA are thrilled to be announcing this new plan, which will really enhance what New Yorkers have been asking for far too long. Really a multimodal transit system that will take into account enhanced access for pedestrians and cyclists. I myself am a New Yorker with a disability, but I am also a cyclist. And like me, there are thousands of people who are going to benefit from expanded pathways on bridges for cyclists, expanded pedestrian access for people who roll throughout the city, and also for connectivity. As we heard from Jano, first mile, last mile are critical for that decision point of whether you're going to take a car or mass transit to get to your final destination. We all know that mass transit is the quickest way to move around New York. It is also the most entertaining way to see our city. So this is really helping New Yorkers make that decision a lot easier. New York has become the most congested city in America, and we need to address that. Initiatives like these combat congestion, and that's why I am so happy to be here. Also, accessibility is universal. So if you thumb through the plan, you'll see that we are also announcing larger elevator cabs because we understand that the need for elevators goes far beyond just those with disabilities. Parents and caregivers with strollers, aging New Yorkers who would rather use an elevator, and of course, our tourists who move around with luggages all benefit from a more accessible transit system. Also in the plan, we are announcing that this year we will finally be installing wide aisle gates that are going to transform what access looks like in our transit system for people who could never get through a turnstile like myself or a parent with a stroller. We're going to make it a lot easier for all those to access our systems in a more safe, equitable, and accessible form. Now, I'd also like to say some words in Spanish. Hoy es un día muy feliz para mí porque estamos anunciando un nuevo plan aquí en Nueva York para expandir la accesibilidad en el sistema de tránsito, tanto como para personas con discapacidad, así como yo, pero también como ciclistas. Yo soy un neoyorquino con una discapacidad, pero también soy ciclista. Y como yo, habemos miles que nos vamos a aprovechar de un sistema más accesible para todos, que tome en consideración tanto la micromovilidad y los ciclistas y peatones que necesitamos ese acceso. Primer y última milla para llegar al sistema es el punto de decisión que determina si los neoyorquinos van a manejar o usar el sistema de tránsito para moverse en la ciudad. Y por eso estoy muy contento de estar aquí con nuestros compañeros de Advocacy Community, también los compañeros electos y la ciudad de Nueva York. Muchas gracias a todos por estar aquí y es un placer para mí.
Thank you. My name is Danny Harris. I'm honored to be the Executive Director at Transportation Alternatives. Let me just start by celebrating that this is exactly where we should be as a city, standing together with leadership across DOT, across MTA, across our elected officials, and advancing landmark ideas that not only continue to put New York first in the nation, but also put New Yorkers first on our streets. 76% of our public space in New York City is devoted to the movement and storage of vehicles. It's unsustainable. Meanwhile, public transit has always been the lifeblood of the city. And so with landmark opportunities like this, like congestion pricing, like helping to expand the incredible reach of the MTA by bringing bikes and micromobility tools to help you get that first and last mile. The two biggest reasons that people don't ride bikes, one is because of safety, and Jamie, my deepest condolences to you and your family and the family that was killed yesterday. 2 cyclists have been killed in the last 5 days. This is primarily a responsibility of DOT and the mayor to ensure that our streets are safe so that when they get to these locations, there are safe places to put your bikes. The other reason is about the security of your bicycle. 25% of New York City households, and this is only the data that's available, have had a bike stolen. By bringing parking and secure bike parking, it helps to ensure not only your ability to get there, but also your livelihood. Again, this is a marquee moment for New York. We look forward to working closely with the MTA to help to deliver these projects at the stations and the bridges. And just I want to say thank you on behalf of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. John Orca with Bike New York, and I'll be very quick, but if you had told me 3 years ago that we'd be standing here talking about going to contract to make the Triborough Bridge bike friendly, in addition to all the other things that our friends at the MTA have spelled out, bike-friendly Henry Hudson Bridge and more, and really talking about a region-wide push for bike-to-transit facilities, I would have been like, I would have been supremely skeptical. But what this just goes to show is when you get strong visionary leadership at one of our big transportation agencies, those obstacles tend to fall away. Thank you. And thank you, Jano, and your team, and all of our friends in the legislature who got this started. It really makes a huge difference to do these things.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Questions on topic first, please. Let's start on topic. Laura, last for panel 7. All right.
A lot of riders notice that people are bringing those scooters. Sometimes they're electric or I don't know how they're charged, battery operated, onto these subways. Is there a plan for having locking storage areas for those or banning those on the subways?
Well, we are developing a new policy that will deal with the growth, which is mostly good news and great news for so many people of e-bikes and scooters and things like that. Not quite done with that, but what it's definitely going to do is make sure there's no charging and there are no vehicles that have combustible fuels. But other than that, we really want to do everything we can to encourage people to take advantage of the opportunity to bring a bike. We're already started doing that by having all these bike racks on bridges, which are significant distances, so people can take a bus over a bridge and then bike the rest of the way, and so on and so on. But we're very much in support of using our system to help move bikes and scooters, provided it can be done safely.
Another on topic, Steve Ness, WNYC.
Hello.
Steve.
I think you said there's 37 priority stations for adding bike racks. What is the time frame for installing those, and how will you make sure that they're actually secure, not like this is just on a corner, anyone could just come over and clip off a bike if they wanted?
Thanks. So just to be clear, what we did an analysis and worked with DOT to get to a commitment to get the racks installed. So I might see if our DOT colleagues would like to comment on that as they. Sorry, are you with DOT or?
Leroy coming up.
Are you with DOT?
Yes.
Okay.
Leroy.
Hi, yes.
Step up behind the microphone.
Okay.
Leroy,
Hi. Hello. Vin Barone. Yes, sure. So we are identifying a timeline. I think we primarily worked with the MTA, our partners, to identify stations that are in the outer boroughs that are at the end of the line where people might have a longer walk to the station. It might make more sense for them to bike there to increase their access to mass transit. I don't know, Leroy, if there's anything else.
And I think it's going to be a good process in partnership with the MTA and all the advocates to be able to continue to do this across the city, because it's very important for us to do these things. So yes, we will continue to do that. We haven't identified exact timeline, but we are identifying the timeline in terms of getting it done as soon as possible.
All right, that's Leroy Branch. Leroy Branch from City DOT.
Any of the changes that you're talking about currently, in process, like can we see any of these changes, and when do you anticipate them to be finished?
Do you want to take another crack at it?
Sure. So what we described is first and foremost a capital investment. These are projects that are long term. We are going to finish the access between Randall's Island and Manhattan, the East Harlem Greenway, this year. We talked about projects that will be completed in the next year as well to provide access to the bridges. We did, as part of this process, as I said, open up access across Cross Bay Bridge for riders to the Rockaways. There's a sharp turn at the end where we have a signage that they have to dismount, but other than that, you're able to get all the way across. So those are big changes happening. We heard from DOT. They have a campaign and work to install bike racks. We're getting that organized with them, and then lots more changes on the way as well.
But I just want to emphasize this is a policy report, principally a policy report that represents a real sea change in MTA policy, that we're now developing policy that we can incorporate bikes and scooters into the planning for mass transit, for an integrated mass transit system. That's a shift. Before, it was kind of fragmented. Nobody at the MTA was really charged with thinking about it. Not only are we opening up our bridges, not only are we figuring out how to get bikes onto buses and subways and commuter rail stations, not only are we going to install bike racks everywhere possible, but we're actually working with the biking community to make sure we're doing it right, because it's all about access. Next.
Jose on topic? Yep. Jose.
Hi, you just answered one of my questions I had, so I'll ask another one to follow up on that. If this is a starting point, a jumping off point, how much further could things go for the MTA in a sea change to incorporating more of the cycling network into the transit system?
I think what we're telling you is that we got a policy that says we're going to do everything possible to make that real, to make the connections between all these micro-mobility options, bicycle, pedestrian, all the accessibility that Q talked about, to make it part of the planning for how you get around in New York without a car, principally using mass transit, but then connecting to all these other options as well. Next.
Hey, sorry, I haven't read the report, so apologies in advance.
No,
but is there any discussion about allowing or putting some sort of rack on the buses so that people can put their bike on a bus rack and then get on the bus and then collect it?
Yes, read the report, because we're doing it already. We've done it already on several of the routes that, for example, cross the Verrazano. We're doing it other places, and there is a commitment to expand it. I think in Jamie's remarks, he actually cited a couple of routes. Was it the Q70?
That's right. Yeah, I'll get the numbers wrong, but it's over the three. We have 3 routes now with bike racks on the front of buses, and then we're announcing as part of this report 3 routes that go over those 3 bridges.
Okay. All right. Off topic.
Go off topic. Hang on a second. If anybody who's not with the MTA wants to excuse yourself,
you're welcome to stay. Okay. Off topic. Always a pleasure. Oh, but the Sage of Valley Stream had his hand raised. It was like the Statue of Liberty over here from Alphonse. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. So there are reports that the delay of Grand Central Madison isn't just a faulty fan, but that there aren't enough people to run all the extra service. Is that true?
Wrong.
And when will it open?
Wrong. Okay. Well, it's going to open. I think we said this umpty times, whatever the technical term would be, that we finished building it. The project is done. Alfonso Castillo and many other folks in your community, in the press community, have been through the facility. It's done. But the sole issue is this craziness with the downdraft from Grand Central, existing Grand Central, making the way that the exhaust system was designed in one location not able to satisfy code. But we're working on it, and I'm not putting a date on it, but we're making progress.
Yeah, indeed. She took at least part of my question. Obviously, we're hearing from a lot of Long Island Railroad riders concerned about East Side access. They were told for a long time through late December that it was opening in 2022. It did not. You said no firm date, but last we heard from Jamie, I think the word was as soon as possible in January. Is January still possible?
Yes, January is possible. But I'm not putting a date on it until we know we're going to satisfy those code requirements. It's a code issue. It's a safety issue. It is as if, Alfonso, you had a walkthrough of a house that was done, and you could smell the new house and you can smell the new paint, and they told you that there's still a village code inspection that needs to take place. That's what we need to get done, and then we're going to open it, and it's going to be thrilling. But I just want to underscore, like, for years when there were problems with East Side access, as the answer was, we're going to push it back to 3 years, 4 years, an untold number of years. We didn't do that. We said, we're getting it done, and the thing is finished, and now we're counting days and weeks and struggling through this one last issue. It is different, and I ask you to make sure that folks understand this is a sea change. that we accomplish by saying we're not pushing it out by years and decades anymore.
A couple things on that. One, what exactly is entailed in addressing this issue with the exhaust? Is this heavy construction, creating new ducts that are going to separate these two zones? And also, what, if any, cost is there to the MTA and to the riders in this work being prolonged?
Well, in terms of cost, our independent engineer who looks at our capital projects and our budgets and our schedule said, this project has ample contingency, so there's no additional project costs that we anticipate at this time. And by the way, if there's an engineering, that some imperfection in the engineering were to blame, not impossible, that didn't take account of the impact of the existing Grand Central's airflows, that will be a interesting discussion under the category of the E&O provisions of our engineering team's insurance policies. I'm not paying for extra work that is necessitated because somebody, however well-intentioned, didn't design something perfectly, and we'll see what happens on that.
Could you address again what the work is to separate?
We're in the process of nailing down, I'm not going to get into it, exactly how physically and mechanically to fix it. But progress is being made, and we remain optimistic.
Ben Brockwell from AM New York.
Hey, Jano. This is the first time I've actually gotten to hold the microphone myself. So I wanted to ask about the
I'm in Brooklyn, home borough.
I wanted to ask about the Interborough Express. Governor Hochul said in the State of the State address yesterday that you guys are moving forward on the light rail proposal.
Yep.
There were some people in the chattering class who were complaining about the choice of light rail over conventional rail, quote unquote. Could you go a little bit more into what went into the decision to do light rail instead of conventional, and what were some of the challenges?
I'll let Jamie talk about but the bottom line is it was judged to be superior in terms of capacity, speed, and engineering viability, principally because the size of a heavy rail vehicle could not be accommodated in some of the existing pathways, and you'd have to build a whole new tunnel, including a whole new tunnel under a cemetery. Jamie, take it away.
I have not. That summed it up. We have definitely seen beneficial advantages. Much of that boils down to cost advantages. We did find it to be definitely the most cost beneficial. And I will say that as the report makes clear, that we have identified that you look at the cost of building this project per average daily rider, which is the right way to look at this, whether there's benefits related to cost. We're showing a very, very moderate cost per average daily rider, especially compared to other systems that have been built out across the country. But as Jano said, light rail scores the highest, particularly engineering feasibility. A conventional rail just would be difficult, if not impossible, but extremely expensive to be able to accommodate in some of the tunnels that we have to go through on this alignment.
But I just want to underscore, we welcome criticism on how we can't do things that are impossible. Go ahead.
Hi, Jamie. Just to go back to Grand Central Madison, I need to explain to my listeners why the exhaust system isn't up to being ready for passengers. Like, how do I explain that to people in a way that makes sense?
It's pretty straightforward. There's one area that's near the entrance from the existing Grand Central lower level where the exhaust system was not able to suck enough air because there were counteractive airflows that were coming from existing Grand Central that were interfering with its ability to accomplish the exhaust power, the CFM that was necessary. It's a little technical, but that's literally it. And we're addressing those engineering issues with a variety of tools that I am not going to talk about, no matter how many times Alfonso asked me.
Ben has one last question.
This is the final question. To me, the glaring omission in the State of the State yesterday was concrete plan for addressing the fiscal cliff and the deficit and all that. The governor had been saying that wait for the state of the state to get that proposal, and it didn't. And it was a little vague. What's the status on the negotiations? How's that going so far?
Listen, I was thrilled by what was in the state of the state yesterday. Obviously, the governor chose to focus on 2 or 3 major themes, unlike some prior states of the state, which were more of a laundry list approach. Not everything, hugely important stuff was drawn out in detail. That wasn't a problem because I heard 3 notes of the song that I am expecting to hear in the budget and the legislative session when she said, we all know that the MTA is the lifeblood of New York City metro region, and we will continue to invest in and ensure its long-term fiscal health. That's what we needed to hear. That was very positive, and I was very pleased.